All right, up and running. Well, welcome everybody to this week's installment from the Dean's Office. I am privileged to be sitting here in the Zoom space this afternoon with Dr. Helen Hansen, who most of you know from her incredible pastoral ministry and preaching ministry and liturgical ministry at the Cathedral. And we are in the 10th year of Helen's ministry as the commissioned director of pastoral ministries here at the Cathedral. Helen being commissioned as part of a team the summer of 2013, June of 2013. And so we're now 10 years under our belt of doing this work together. And I thought no better time than the present for everybody to get to know Helen a little better and to learn a little more about kind of how pastoral care works at the Cathedral and what the vision is for that and how we nourish that and keep the flywheel spinning and keep new talent showing up into that ministry. So without further ado, Helen Hansen, good to be with you, Helen.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul, a lot. And thanks for the opportunity to have a conversation about something very near and dear to my heart.
Absolutely. Well, I'm grateful that you have taken some time. I know that life is always hairy, and to carve out time, it means a lot. So we want to honor your time and everyone else's time. So I wonder if you would just give us a little sense for how you came to this ministry yourself and what your ministry means to you, what it looks like, and just kind of how pastoral ministry looks at the Cathedral.
Sure. I think you noted that our shared ministry team was commissioned and ordained almost 10 years ago. And prior to that, Siri Hauge and Terry Erickson and Lowell Johnson and Roger Franzen and I had been engaged in a formation process, and each of us discerned our path in wanting to be part of this shared ministry team. And it was very clear to me from the beginning that I was not destined for holy orders, but rather that I saw myself in lay ministry. And with my 40 years of nursing behind me, pastoral ministry just was exactly where I wanted to be. I never really doubted that. We had an interim there where Bruce Caldwell was with us, Bishop Bruce Caldwell was with us, and when he met with the evolving shared ministry team at the time, he wanted to know how we were going to start pastoral ministry, and I had all these very big ideas about what we might do, and he said, well, why don't you start with Eucharistic visiting? And we went, aha, yeah, that's very straightforward. That's something we can do. And we learned how to do the training, and we developed Eucharistic visiting. At that time, I think Carl Hawker might have been the only person who was really doing Eucharistic visiting on a regular basis. So that's kind of how we got started. A few years later, we recognized, after I'd been commissioned into this role, we recognized that we needed to expand what pastoral ministry meant. We needed to think about what were some of the other kinds of roles in which we might serve. And we formed a little team of people who began to think about this, what pastoral ministry should look like. And basically, we knew that what we wanted to be able to do was to really listen to the folks at St. Mark's. What were their needs? What were their hopes about not only being members of this community, but having a real sense of belonging and feeling that when life got really difficult, there were resources for them. And those resources were a team.
Yep.
So eventually we began to create that team.
Yeah, and curious, how many Eucharistic ministers or Eucharistic visitors do you have now? Any guess off the top of your head?
I think we have about 6 or 7 people who are active, actively.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I recall even as I was getting here, there was conversations about how to make sure people could make their needs known. If they couldn't get a hold of you by phone, they could make their needs known through the website or through various. So some of it's also just developing the technical capacity to stay in touch with the body, which you've done a great job at.
And I think it's really important to understand about pastoral ministry is that we're kind of a quiet company. We try to pay close attention to what people in the congregation are saying about the people they love in the congregation. And while we might not learn particulars about people, when we come to understand that a family or an individual is in distress, then we reach out, but we reach out in a pretty quiet way, in a very confidential way.
Yep.
To see how we can be helpful.
Yeah. And so say you were talking with somebody brand new to the cathedral who was wondering kind of how pastoral ministry works at St. Mark's. Maybe they'd had an experience of pastoral ministry elsewhere. What would you share with them about things that might kind of feel familiar to them in terms of pastoral ministry? And what would you tell them was maybe a little different about how we do pastoral ministry at the cathedral?
Well, I think for Episcopalians, we're pretty familiar with Eucharistic visiting. That's it, and it's something that we see every Sunday. We see people coming and taking the communion kit and getting ready to visit. We serve at the prayer station, and during the Eucharist, we're present to hear people's prayers and intercessions and petitions and pray and anoint. And that's a fairly visible kind of pastoral ministry that we do. We do some calling ministry. We send cards to people, especially when we learn about what people's needs might be. Our pastoral, our prayer request form on the website is a way that people can let us know when they make a prayer request. They can let us know if they'd also like to be contacted by someone from the pastoral care team. And again, we rely on our brothers and sisters to let us know whom we need to reach out to and how we might reach out to them.
Yeah, I am well aware that one of the things that really jumped out at me when I was first exploring ministry here at the cathedral back in 2014, just after the team had come together and been commissioned, was it was really clear to me that the narrative around pastoral care was that it's the work of the congregation, that part of discipleship and part of following Jesus is that we also care for each other who are fellow pilgrims, and that it isn't, what was clear to me, it isn't something that gets referred to a professional to care for the person sitting right next to us, that we've actually got the capacity to care for each other. It doesn't have to get sent down the line, right, to the clergy person. So I've been so impressed that the way you've been able to figure out and communicate that the team is lay-led, and as the bishop says, lay-led, clergy-supported, but not clergy-centric in any way that creates bottlenecks, and it actually frees the body to care for itself and for each other in a way that I just find to be miraculous and quite prophetic, honestly, the culture that you've created. And I understand that culture actually comes from somewhere. That there's a resource that you were first kind of incorporating into the life of the cathedral shortly after I got here, with Community of Hope. And I suspect a lot of people don't know what that's about and how it informs how we do this. But would you connect those dots a little bit for us about how it shapes what we do?
Sure. Well, I've got to confess that it was my becoming aware of Community of Hope that led me to come to appreciate the role of Benedictine spirituality in our life as Episcopalians. I was really late coming to that. But as a small team, when we were beginning to think about how pastoral care might evolve, we knew we needed to do some training. We needed to discern and prepare ourselves in a thoughtful way. And we looked at a variety of types of training that we might use, Stephen Ministry, Prefenders, all fine programs. But I got led very serendipitously to Kate Maxwell at St. John's in Linden Hills, who was doing this program called Community of Hope. And as Kate taught me about what Community of Hope was, it's a program that was developed by an Episcopal priest in Texas who was asked by her, she was a chaplain at a hospital, she was asked to develop a program to train lay pastoral caregivers. And this developed into a really quite beautiful curriculum of 14 units, and that covers Benedictine theology, Benedictine spirituality, all sorts of dimensions of what pastoral ministry might be about, how we deal with grief, how we identify as pastoral caregivers. We look at family systems. We learn about listening. As St. Benedict would say, this is what we're all about, really, when we're pastoral ministers, is we're listening with the ears of our hearts. And so listening is part of that program. I think I mentioned we also spend a good bit of time on prayer, meditation, contemplative prayer. And then people have the opportunity to actually make practice visits, to visit with people and use some of the skills they've learned in this quote training. I prefer to think of it as discernment and formation, because the richness of the objective of learning how to care in community and to underscore a sense of belonging within the community, almost, not precisely as monastics might, but to live together in the way St. Benedict called monastics to live together, which was to respect each other, to honor each other, listen to each other, pray together, worship together, serve together. So that is what Community of Hope has brought to those of us who are now doing pastoral ministry. And we hope it's a program, training, however you want to look at it, that other people might find a way into finding their own ministry. When we do Community of Hope, we don't expect people to come out in some sort of cookie cutter sort of job or role. What we're hoping is that they find what they feel God is calling them to do in our community.
Love that. Yeah, deep discernment about what each person's exercise of care for the other and attentiveness. And fundamentally, what does attentiveness look like for them as they're uniquely created? Yeah, I love that. Right. Yeah, so in a sense that just reinforces the whole notion that this isn't a very narrow group that does this. This is leaven for the whole loaf of the place, to learn how we're all uniquely created to be part of God's active love in the world and the spheres that we spend most of our time. This isn't just about equipping a small team that does it for us, right? I love that it's leaven. Yeah. And particularly because it's spiritually grounded in the Benedictine framework that is so much of what we talk about in a larger congregation, pray, study, serve, the notion that we all have a vocation, and so much of our life together is A, to discover it, B, to practice it, and to kind of deeply discern, well, what does this look at every age and stage as members of this faith community, but also members of the larger community, right? That it actually makes a difference in our lives.
Right. And to be supported in the work. And those of us who have been trained in Community of Hope. We meet on a regular basis, and we're available to each other to support. We continue to study the rule. We continue to look at how might we change or evolve or derive new ministries, pastoral ministries at St. Mark's, where we think about things like, how can we be better at serving at the end of life? And we're figuring out how is God guiding us to be present to families who are in one sort of distress or another. And I think the other thing we're finding is that we are better at supporting congregants in their reaching out to each other. So sometimes when we're asked, well, how is so-and-so? We often say, well, what about making a call? And, if you're feeling a little nervous about that, here, this is how you might do it.
Right. Yeah, equipping the whole body to care for one another. Yeah. Now, I do understand. A little bird might have told me that you might have an invitation to make to the congregation. So this is your opportunity, having heard what a beautiful ministry this is, and quite honestly, how life-changing it is for those who participate in it. You've got an invitation for us. So what is that?
Well, we have had an open invitation here for a few weeks to our congregation to make connection with me if they have interest in this thing we call Community of Hope. I've also put out an invitation for people who might think they'd like to try being involved in Eucharistic visiting. It's a wonderful way to enter into supporting people in our community. But we are planning to begin Community of Hope training at the end of February. We're beginning February 24th. And we like to be able to, this coming Sunday after church, after 10:30, meet in the library with anybody who would like to just have a chat with any one of us on the pastoral care team and learn a little bit more about what it is to be a pastoral care minister at St. Mark's, what Community of Hope might mean for them, and what other sorts of things they might find themselves called to when it comes to pastoral ministry at St. Mark's.
That's great. So that's, clear and concrete. So this Sunday, the 5th of February, after the 10:30 service, so right around noon in the library, we'll have people watching for you if you're trying to make your way there. And I think you've said it well, that it's lots of different types of folks who do pastoral ministry, many of whom are probably surprised by their gifts in the ministry. Mm-hmm. And so even if there are folks out there hearing this who don't see themselves as a pastor, I bet they do see themselves as a companion to others. I bet they've got all sorts of experiences where they just live life with other people. And this is really just helping to do that in a deep way, where we're present even to the stuff that would often scare us apart. Yeah. It's just it's a great thing, whether it shows up in practical pastoral ministries here that get scheduled for the Cathedral, or whether it's just life-changing in how you show up in your daily life. However you see this affecting you and informing you as a disciple and follower of Jesus, this is something that you ought to peek in on. So I do hope that you'll take Helen's warm invitation to just a little bit of time together with some current practitioners in the library Sunday at 12 o'clock here at the Cathedral, and then you can see where the conversation goes. There's no strings attached. I bet there won't even be a sign-up sheet.
No sign-up sheets.
It's just casual conversation and early exploration. And any time you get to spend with Helen in the same room is time well spent. So I hope that you'll take that opportunity to do so. So any last words, Helen, for the good of the order?
No, I like to think back to Devin's sermon about belonging. It comes up to me as I think about pastoral ministry, because it is about having a sense of belonging and helping others have that sense of belonging.
Amen. Amen. Well, no, you have been that for me. along with a number of cloud of witnesses here at the Cathedral, and just want you to know how much I love you and I appreciate your ministry, and I'm daily inspired by how you not only care for others, but invite folks into the care of others. You just are a bright light in this community, and I'm grateful for you calling another group together to explore that ministry for themselves. So thank you for
Thank
this
you
time
all.
together, and we'll stop this and get it sent out, and you and I can follow up at another point. So goodbye for now, and we'll see
Peace
you
and
soon.
courage.